I had a great life. At the time I was married, to a really great woman. I had really, two really interesting careers. Lived in London, traveled, great friends. I had, had everything, and
Yeah.
and yet I was depressed. A shaman in Peru once said to me that all psychedelics are amplifiers for what we feel inside. On the negative side, all the things that we don't want to feel, we get to feel them.
Scott Murden, welcome to the Natural Biohacker Podcast. Such honor to have you here, and welcome to the show.
Great to be here, bro. Great to reconnect with you as well.
Yeah, just got to know you in Kopangan. You have been here for a visit, and I'm just checking out your work, and I see so much similarities to our work, which I do with Nadia. We're also working like with professionals, with entrepreneurs, and also telling them like how to navigate this human experience. And you're the human experience coach, so maybe you can just find a few words to describe yourself for the audience.
Yeah, so I sort of label myself as a human experience coach, because I think a lot of what I do comes from navigating the human experience and trying to sort of come into an understanding and an experience of our authentic self. And once we start to recognize that, how do we then start to make the changes in our life to sort of live more in alignment with that? And so that's the essence of what I do.
You're also like working with the indigenous tribes, like the Hunikuins, like for a decade now. So maybe let's just go back a little bit in time. So the Scott Murden, like 10, 15 years ago. So where you come from, and what was your transformation in this time?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think the place to start is actually back in 2011, 2012, I was suppressed. Was about 6 months into the depression that I realized I was actually in that space. And that was really interesting for me because I worked in mental health as a sort of coach, frontline mental health worker in London, which I've been doing for a number of years, doing a lot of healing sort of work as a sort of regression practitioner as well. Had been part of a really incredible school of meditation and transformation, mapping consciousness, working in very specific sort of healing modalities. And I had a great life. At the time I was married, to a really great woman. I had really, two really interesting careers. Lived in London, traveled, great friends. I had, had everything, and yet I was depressed, and that led me into a bit of a sort of personal inquiry into why was that? Why did I ended up in this sort of place? And I started to realize that I wasn't getting the experience that I wanted in life, and I wasn't getting to feel what I wanted to feel. And so that was a really interesting insight for me. And so I started to, part of my training was about mapping experience, mapping experiences inside of us, but also on a sort of larger sort of conscious, deeper states of consciousness level. And I just developed a bit of a practice around coming into the experience of what I wanted to feel, and that question, in life, what am I actually looking to feel here? So I'm chasing all of these things, trying to become a successful filmmaker, have a great marriage, make money, live a great life. But in all of that, what did I want to feel? And so I through this kind of embodiment practice that I developed, started to understand that, started coming to the experience of that, and these states of feeling started to emerge. And I was able to then start to find words to describe that for me, wanting to feel more unified, wanting to feel more liberated, wanting to feel a little bit more dangerous in my life. Because at that point, I think I was, taking all the steps that everyone else was taking, and it was kind of very safe and easy. Wanting to feel more electric in my body, more alive.
Also like to escape a little bit the comfort zone maybe you created for yourself.
Yeah, well, that's what feeling dangerous was all about, I think. It just allowed me to start to take steps from more of this authentic place. And so these words became kind of my sort of, mindsets in a way. But it was based on a feeling. And so I started to come back into the feeling based on, what would it be like to feel a little bit dangerous right now? And what does that tell me about my life in this moment? And it was really interesting. I started to do that, and within a year, my life kind of did like a 180-degree turn. And lots of things started to shift very, very, very quickly. And that was kind of amazing, but it was also kind of shocking at the same time, because up until that point, I thought I was someone that lives in alignment. I had a strong connection with a sort of that sense of the higher self, or my sort of soul force. Had a lot of great practices that I've been doing over 10 years. But the missing piece was I wasn't connected to myself on a deep embodied level, on this sort of deep desire, the desire to feel something. And so that is what really started to change my life. And then soon after that, I started to explore plant medicine, ayahuasca, psychedelic, and that work really resonated with this part of me.
Yeah.
And that quickly developed into, with all the sort of practices and skills and healing work, I started to sort of move into that sort of arena, in more of a sort of facilitator kind of role. But yeah, it was that was the essence of it. That's what really started to change my life. And then side by side with that was my coaching work. Sort of took a bit of a shift. I left the mental health work, and started my own practice, and exploring with professional people, entrepreneurs, people in corporate sort of spheres, people with families, that were in similar sort of positions, and just really stuck, and started going down their sort of healing sort of route with them. But what I realized really quickly was actually they were just disconnected from what they wanted to feel. And so I started to actually do these practices that I'd been doing for myself with them, starting with what do you want to feel, and then seeing what needs to be healed from that sort of standpoint, or looking at sort of limiting kind of belief systems, or the limiting patterns that come up. And very quickly people started having big shifts, and seeing the shifts actually play out in their life. It wasn't just an internal thing. It was life was actually starting to reorganize in a way that was more in alignment with what they actually wanted.
It reminds me also like a little bit on our coaching from Nadia and me, because we always ask the people, so not what they wanted to feel, but how should it be? How should be life for you? Because we have this idea in our head, like, okay, I don't want this, I don't want that. And then we're coming into the complaining and why my life is so ugly and so uninteresting, and look at this person and look at this guy. And then then we start like the downward spiral, which leads to depression, which leads to mental health issues. So, and this is it's a focus thing. It's just what you do want to feel in your life. And that maybe you don't have an answer for it. I'm sure you don't have an answer when you just ask yourself this question for the first time. Yeah. But it's really powerful. And then you're going to look for the answers in the Amazon, in plant medicine, or in other coachings.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really interesting. Everyone's very clear what they don't want.
Yeah.
when you try to drill down into what do they actually want, it's very, very confusing for them. And I think that what's really interesting in exploring that is looking at the standpoint that we're trying to answer that question from, because we're all stuck in our heads, and so we're trying to figure it out from a mental point of view. But it just seems very powerful to come into an embodied, felt state, to feel into these things and let that start to guide us. The information comes quite kind of naturally once you get that right, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm super curious about the beginning of your journey when you started to work with plant medicines, and you coming from this world of just working as a mental health worker, and to just have to deal with this kind of problems and with these people, and then you shift into, okay, now I'm maybe one of them because I also have the depression. And then you said, okay, I take this plant medicine, maybe ayahuasca, travel to the rainforest. So how was the transformation at this point? Like, did you have like an insight where you say, okay, it's like that, or like a mystical experience or something which shifted your life?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So back when I started with my school of meditation, which is a bit of a sort of mystery school kind of tradition, the main healing practice that we did was a sort of regression type of practice, which involved sometimes going into past lives and looking at sort of trauma or samskara that relate to past lives and how they're influencing this life. And when I started that work, I found myself going to a life in Peru. And I didn't really understand what it was. I knew it was a very, very old life. And there were aspects of the visions that I got in that didn't quite make sense until 10 years later. I was part of a Tantra community, and I was, in that community, I had a very good friend who came from a very sort of similar sort of background to me. And I was hanging out with her one day, and she'd just come from an ayahuasca ceremony. And she was telling me about it, and I'd never heard of ayahuasca at that point. And as she described it, I understood that an aspect of that past life that I'd seen was related to plant medicine. And I knew I had to try this. And within 5 minutes, a good friend of hers came in and arrived and had just come from a ceremony. And basically within a month, he hooked us up. We went to a ceremony in London with a really great shaman there, and I had this experience, and it was beautiful. It was amazing, and I really appreciated all of the 10 years of work that I'd done before having that experience, because I kind of knew exactly how to navigate the experience and feel into everything and be curious and explore that sort of space. And I came out of it, and I was like, okay, that was great. I don't need to do that again. I didn't feel like this kind of call at that point to go down that path. But then a few months went past, and I just felt this pull to this kind of little itch to go back. There was something there to to explore, and this is very common for a lot of people, right?
Know that.
And so I went again, and at the beginning of the circle, she got us all to ask us our intent for being there, and went around the circle, and it came to me, and I just was like, I don't know why I'm here. I just felt some reason to come here, and it was a really beautiful ceremony. It was completely, every ceremony is different, right? This one was completely chaotic. And I found myself kind of assisting two people either side of me that were in sort of big processes, just because, the team there were overwhelmed, and I kind of knew exactly what to do. But then the interesting thing was, at the end of the work, she invited everyone to come to the Amazon and connect to a tribe in Brazil which is the Huniquin people, and a particular spiritual leader that she'd been working with from that tribe. And I just felt this big yes inside me to go. And so I signed up for this trip. And it was curious because I knew nothing about them. You know, I had no connection to them at all, but just something inside me really wanted to go. Anyway, I was in this sort of process that I, describing around working from the authentic self and both changing. And part of that was to go on a sabbatical. And I went to California to where my school had a center there and did a 3 months sort of meditation, a lot of practices and retreats. And went into like a very deep, dark night of the soul kind of experience. And it was one of those moments where I think my life, I really understood that path that I'd been on with that school was coming to an end. And I just felt drawn to this adventure, this work of, plant medicines. Not that I really understood it or knew where it was going to lead. I knew I had to go to the jungle.
Yeah.
And then so a few months later, like the invitation came through again. I didn't have the money to do it. I went on this little trip to Mount Shasta, which is this big, volcano.
I heard about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible place.
Hmm.
And I didn't have the money for this trip.
Yeah.
I went to Shasta and went on this walk up one of the ridges. At the top of the ridge, you overlook Shasta. And someone had built a stone throne right on the top there. And it was like it was waiting for me. I sat in the throne. For about an hour, I meditated with the mountain. And I asked it, how do I go on this trip? I don't have the money. If you have any insights here, let me know.
Mm.
And within 15 minutes, I had the answer. And within a week, I had the money for the trip. And a month later, I was on a 4-day boat ride down the river to go see these people in the forest. And I spent 2 weeks there with them, and incredible trip. Beautiful people. Went really deep with the plant medicine experience, and right in the center of the Amazon. 4 days boat ride from the nearest town.
Wow.
And had some crazy experiences, and again sort of came back from that trip and just started that whole integration process, and really didn't know where my life was kind of going, because I sort of decided to leave my film work at that point, as well as started to explore this kind of coaching work, but it all just started to open up from there. And very soon after that, I found myself assisting in ceremonies, just going deeper and deeper without actually knowing exactly where it was going.
Yeah. Wow, super interesting path. Before we go a little bit deeper, can you maybe check your headphones? I think I hear something like or something.
There might be some this is it the microphone? Is that better if I do that?
Yeah, it's coming like something when you speak.
There's a bit of construction going on in the background.
Maybe it's yeah, but okay. I have my programs. I can understand you. Okay, so we can record in higher quality then. Okay. Yeah, wow, interesting. I also want to visit the Huniquin people. Like 3 years ago, I've been with Nadia with the Yabanaba tribe for 10 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, 10 hours boat ride. I think Huniquin is a little bit further, deeper in the heart of the Amazon. Yeah, definitely is a commitment. But I can imagine that because we were sitting in Colombia, and we had also like some money issues. And then we said, yeah, but now there's like the birthday of the chief, from Nishiwaka. And we sat with them in Tulum, also with the Huniquin people. And there was one ceremony we sat with the Yabanawa people and one guy from the Huniquin, Chana Ikakuru.
Ikakuru,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it was super crazy. And then we just felt this urge, like, hey, we need to go there. Now we are here. We are in Colombia, so like Brazil is it's right there. We need to go. And we're also like, yeah, what we can do. And then it just manifested, yeah, that we can go into the jungle and to have this amazing trip. And I'm so grateful because I also have the feeling you get a lot from them. You really get a lot. And it's like they just equip you with tools and with energies and with like new voices and everything. It was so crazy. And then we go back to Europe and also here to Kopangan, and we have like new tools to share, you know. And I always thinking with a lot of gratitude back to these people. And yeah, I can imagine when you work with them for about a decade, what's it be like? So when we come from this point, you are now also like the UK ambassador of the Huni Queen people.
Yeah.
So maybe first of all, what are the Huni Queen people for the people for the audience? Maybe they know, okay, what means Huni Queen,
Sure, yeah.
and yeah, and then maybe we can explore. So, what kind of work you do as a ambassador for them?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, so the Huniquin people are from Brazil, from the state of Acre, which is like the state on the western basin of the Amazon, right
Yeah,
next to Peru. And their lands are quite large. There's about 12 different lands of the Huniquin. They're right next to, very close to the Yawanawa and the Ashaninka and the Shawandawa and some of these other tribes.
yeah,
Uh, but the name Huniquin in their language means true people. And in Acre, I think they're one of the biggest tribes population-wise in Acre. There's about 10 to 12,000 of them, I think. Um, and it's interesting because they were one of the tribes that were able to sort of, at least in part, navigate the whole colonization period. And so they were able to stay connected to a lot of their traditions and beliefs and their sort of their culture, you know, their spirituality, which for some of the other tribes was very, very difficult. So that's a really interesting aspect of them. Um, and yeah, I mean, I've been working with them for 10 years now. And it's just kind of evolved in this very organic kind of way. And I sort of, they travel a lot now to share their culture, to share their spirituality, their practices. Um, and I sort of came into this role as a guardian for them, as an ambassador. Um, and my main role is to support their work, to support their mission, to build a community in the UK, to connect them with other communities around Europe and Asia, the United States, and just this beautiful networks kind of emerged over the last 10 years. And yeah, and so like a lot of it is bringing their healing work to people, but also supporting their sort of projects in the village to help them sort of build their villages more and be more connected and be more sustainable, and so that they can sort of flourish there in the forest as well, which is extremely difficult. It's very beautiful, but it's incredibly challenging for the indigenous generally in Brazil, all over the world probably, but to sustain their life and their culture.
wow. What do you think is like? We all talk about ayahuasca and yeah, but there's so much more there. There's so much more like indigenous practices. And so, yeah, you just invested a lot of time to explore, for sure, ceremonies with ayahuasca, but also more like the other spiritual practice, the knowledge, the cosmology. So what is your main or your main learnings from them besides ayahuasca?
Yeah, so there are a few kind of mindsets that I've actually picked up from them. Um, and it's interesting working with them because they don't, the way they teach is through demonstrating what they do. They don't actually teach you this is what we do. You just start to pick these things up. Yeah, and one of the first ones that I got for them was in ceremony they say "so alegria" a lot. You know, it's like a sort of, you know, they say "hausch hausch," which a lot of people are, I'm sure, are familiar with, which is kind of like "amen," but it's a way of like recognizing what someone's saying or the sacredness of the moment. Um, but then they'll usually follow that up with "so alegria," only joy. Um, and and what I noticed over the years was this wasn't just something they said in ceremony, something they say in life, but it's actually how they live life is with joy. Um, and it's not just to be joyful and and have a good time. It's actually that's how they meet the challenges in life. Um, that's their first response is so alegria. Um, and it really struck me once. So I was here in India and we had one of their spiritual leaders here with us, and it was the beginning of the lockdown, and he got here in India, and he couldn't get back to Brazil. His trip back was with all the flights and the chaos, and he was supposed to be back in time for the birth of his fourth daughter, who is my goddaughter now, actually. And I asked him, how are you feeling? He must be like really sad that you can't get back. And he's like, no try. It's like, so I'll agree. It, you know, that's how he met it. And
Yeah, it's also like to trust the universe so that you're in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's another mindset they have. So joy is like that feeling that we connect to connect us to like the highest sort of frequency, you could say, to overcome, you know, the challenges. But then their next mindset is, and this is something else they say, is Yushibu no commando. And Yushibu is their word for they use to describe the creator, or one of the words. Yushibu no commando means only God is in command.
Mm-hmm.
And so when there are these challenges that we face and we don't know how we're going to overcome this, Yushibu no commando. God is in command. He'll find a way.
Yeah.
So that's another really incredible mindset to cultivate. Because we all have those moments in life where we're like in situations and we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So many possibilities, so many different challenges, complexities to navigate,
Yeah.
and it can be overwhelming. But that idea of Yushibu no Commando, it's like I'm just giving this issue, this problem, this challenge to God to help me overcome it. And so there's a kind of I don't know, something when I use that as a mindset, as a practice, something in me relaxes. You know, I feel supported in some way. Um, so that's another great sort of mindset that they have. And one of the other ones that I really appreciate about as well is their practice around, you know, gratitude. You know, it's something they're always expressing, you know, like gratitude for, you know, and I remember, when I really got this about them was, so at the end of every sort of event or work or workshop or when they're closing a ceremony, they share gratitude. Um, and and in this particular time, the spiritual leader was, you know, sharing gratitude for the time together. He was grateful to me for doing the organization. He was grateful to all the participants. He was grateful to, you know, the people that had come with him from Brazil to support the work. He was grateful to his family for letting him go off on this trip to share his spirituality. He was grateful to all of the spiritual leaders that had gone, through all the generations, but carrying this lineage, that he had the honor to be one of those people that carried that lineage. And then he kept going. This was his first trip overseas. He'd never been out of Brazil. He'd never been on a plane at that point. And he was grateful to the people that flew him from the forest to the UK. But he was also grateful to the people that, all the technology that had went into building the plane, and the people that made the plane so that he could go on that trip. He was grateful to the person that invented the ability to fly. He didn't know who that was, but he was like, whoever that person was, I'm very grateful. And it was really beautiful to listen to this. Because suddenly that way of practicing gratitude. So, like our tendency with gratitude is, we're grateful for what we have, and what we get to experience. But to then be grateful for how these amazing circumstances come to us, it really shifts your point of view. Like, you really understand, actually, there's so much more here than just my experience. It's like my experience rests on all of these other things, that to then go and be grateful for, it just changes your perspective. And it's very humbling kind of process. So yeah, really, really, really interesting approach to gratitude. So that's another sort of one I really picked up on that I really try to practice. Wow.
Yesterday I had a 3-hour podcast in English, so this was really amazing with a good friend, and he's from German, so we was okay for us to speak in English, but we also can do it in German. But we also touched this topic of gratitude really, really deeply. And he said he's now in Mexico, and he was in the supermarket, the Chedraui, and then he find like avena milk, oat milk. Mm-hmm. And he was so grateful to find it, and he was like smiling to the people. Yeah. And then he see the other people who are just like putting one item after the other in their shopping, and this is really, really, really sad, because we just take everything for granted. Also, like flying, which is every time I sit in the airport and in the airplane, I just think, wow, it's amazing. We are just like lifting up from the ground and going up to the clouds. It's an amazing technology. But there are a lot of people also, they are just like saying, yeah, it's normal. It's normal to go like, also entrepreneurs, to go with the plane like several times a week. Yeah. So and also with the car, you can just go down to the car, down to the bicycle. So it's really, really crazy. And what I take from this practice, from the Hunikuin, is it's a really deep form of consciousness, because like the consciousness is flowing. It's like really fluid, and it's fluid to all this kind of gratitude practices, and it's just amazing. And I think if we can do this every day, especially I do it when I eat. Every time when I eat, I do a small prayer, and then I just think about, okay, how is this possible right now? That the potatoes are there, and the meat is there, and this is there, and this is there, and it makes me really humble, And yeah, thank you for sharing this. Yeah, gratitude is a big, big topic, and I think we need to do it even more.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
yeah. It just changes our perspective in that like, especially this approach, it allows us to understand, like we're saying, like where everything comes from. It breaks us out of our ego, I think. Yeah. It's not all about me. I'm connected to something much bigger. Yeah.
And also the mindset of so alegria. Yeah, we see it in the world like there's another mindset. There's something is happening, and I answer with weapons, I answer with war, I answer with fight, I answer with complaining. So it's completely another way. But what happens when we answer with so alegria? So, and what happens with our actions? What happens with our voices and with the peace? Yeah, which we need right now. And I think this is also like the main reason, because like somebody like a Hunikuin leader is traveling, because he needs to protect for sure the forest and the traditions as well, to make the people more conscious. But I like this idea of ayahuasca, which is like a defense, a self defense for the rainforest, and also like to expand this knowledge and this consciousness to the Western world, because we are now, when I look in the world right now, I don't know how you see it, but I see we are not like, in some parts we are same like 70 years ago. Is same like answering with war and with weapons, and put our money into weapons instead of good food and all this kind of stuff, mental health, and yeah, and that's why the medicine is really, really important. Not just ayahuasca, also the other plant medicines, but also like coaching, breath work, nervous system regulation. So it's really important.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of moving into the way I see it is there's a lot more polarity now in the sense of, on one hand, there's a lot of consciousness and awareness of all of these issues you're talking about and practices, and people, a lot of people doing this kind of work now. But at the same time, it's like that kind of work on a sort of consciousness level. It's bringing up all of these kind of collective conscious things to navigate. Like we're starting to see the root of a lot of this darkness that's around, so that we can hopefully address it and heal it. Because like in any healing, if you can't see the issue that needs to be healed, you can't heal it. So these things, so this elevation of consciousness that I think is happening through all of these conscious practices, it's bringing up a lot of really dark, kind of scary things that we have to confront, and make new choices. And that's happening, but there's also the resistance around that. Like, if you sort of see sort of corporate practices, they're starting, at least give lip service to the environment and being more conscious and connected to the earth. At the same time, they're being more aggressive in what they do, because I feel like this era that we're in is kind of coming to an end. All of these different sort of systems that have been in place for the last sort of 50, 100 years are breaking down, and they're starting to collapse.
Yeah.
So that we can, and what's the Fuller quote, you don't change the world by destroying a thing, you change it by building the new thing that makes the old obsolete.
Yeah, yeah. I love this idea. Just talked yesterday in a podcast with my friend about this, to build up like a kind of parallel world, yeah, which is like, yeah, you have a mental health issue, or you have a body issue, so but you don't take medication, or you don't take drugs, but you go to a therapist, you go to a coach, you make your mindfulness practices, maybe you go to live with the indigenous tribe and learn from them how to live, or the art of living, connected with the nature. And I think this parallel world, it's already existing. And now it's the job just to make it like bigger, 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 and bigger. And yeah, and tell more people about it. And I think this is what also your kind of work is about, with the ambassador of the Huni Queen, but also in the coaching realm. It's really important, and that's why I feel such a strong connection to you, because you also work with professionals and entrepreneurs. Maybe we can go a little bit in this direction right now in the podcast, because a lot of people, they're mistaking, I think. They think like the politicians, they rule the world. And I think it's the entrepreneurs who rule the world, the people with the big companies, and also with the small companies,
Yeah.
and all kind of people who are like following a dream, who are making like solutions for the majority of the people. And what happens? And this is always the question I ask myself: what happens when they do the work? And I mean not the outer work, I mean the inner work. What if they do breath work, if they try to start to regulate their nervous system, to breathe in another pattern? You know, I am also work as a breathwork coach, so it's a really, really big topic.
Yeah.
So like the most of the people that come to us, they can't breathe.
Yeah.
I mean, they can breathe like to survive, but they don't can really connect to their breathing and have dysfunctional breathing and dysregulated nervous system. Yeah. And
I mean,
yeah,
I'd also add, you know, they don't even know how to feel their emotions.
yeah,
You know, which is what breath tends to show up, like how disconnected they are.
Yeah, this is at the end of the path. It's about the feeling. And I want to ask you as well, because so many people come to you to work with you as a coach to navigate this human experience. And when they are from the professional side and from the entrepreneurial side, so what is the main reason they come to you?
Yeah, I think they're stressed, they're burnt out, they're deeply unhappy. They don't know what they want. They're at that point, similar to me, like they were on a path moving towards something that they thought they wanted, and they've had some kind of success in their life, and it's why am I still unhappy? This isn't what I really. I thought I wanted this. You know, even the ones that are successful, it's like, oh, I thought I wanted this, but now this is not it. Something's missing.
Yeah.
And so the big thing that's missing is they don't know how to feel. So they're very disconnected from that side of them, and you know that's why a lot of them start to explore psychedelics. They need that intensity of experience to break through their mind. Then they realize, oh fuck, I'm totally inequipped to actually feel my emotion. And so they need some kind of practice and structure to actually come into that experience in a way that is that it's uncomfortable in the beginning, and not just for entrepreneurs, but for most of us. Because you know, a lot of the time we're stuck in our heads because what we feel is comfortable, and we don't know how to navigate that. But also we don't really know. We have an idea of what we think we want to feel, but because we're so disconnected from feeling, we don't actually know what that is on a very authentic, embodied level. And so that's what my work's all about, is to shift standpoint from the analytical mind that's caught up in this kind of game of trying to sort of find success or that thing that's going to bring us happiness, and to come into that experience of yourself so you know what you want to feel, and you feel that. It's like, you know, the way I sort of describe it is there is the labyrinth way of living life where we're trying to find the center to get what we want. And then there's the playground, which is where we know what we want to feel. We live from that place, and everything is this exploration and adventure. And it's still full of challenges, but I'm already connected to what I want to feel now. So I can just explore this and navigate this and create this experience that I want, you know. And the challenges then they're like teachers now. They're sort of asking this question. All right, you feel liberated and dangerous and magical, and can you feel that even though work's not going very well, or you're having problems with your partner, or you know, whatever challenge that's kind of emerging? So it raises the game of our practice. We become more resilient and, you know, anti-fragile, and we become more powerful. You know, and that's a really beautiful way to live life. And you know, there's a story I tell. So part of what I teach is around reclaiming power and deconstructing power, because a lot of what we call power, I would describe as control. Um, and the story I use to sort of illustrate this is the story of Gandhi. So Gandhi was one guy who had this mission to liberate to liberate India from British rule. And the British Empire had their armies, they had their economic might, they had their bureaucracy, they had everything to impose this rule on India. Gandhi didn't have any of that. He just had his voice and his practice of nonviolent, confrontation and resistance, and that inspired so many people to, he gave them something that they could actually do. He empowered people, and he didn't do that through controlling them. He didn't, he wasn't trying to coerce anyone. Everyone chose to follow him. And the British Empire tried to destroy him. They threw him in jail many times. They probably would have killed him if they thought they could get away with it. But so here's this guy after 2 decades. Eventually, India is liberated from British rule. And my question is then, who had power? And that, to me, is the signature of real power is someone like Gandhi. He's not trying to control anything. He's looking for an ideal kind of resolution, but he's doing it in a way that's empowering other people and not about control. And so that's a really interesting experience, that to come into that experience of yourself, like to actually start to feel, what does real power feel like to you? And Gandhi was able to, he became powerful because of all of this adversity. Like, the British Empire was like the empire of the world at the time.
Yeah.
That's what he was up against. And yet he was able to overcome them. That's what I mean by, he's living from the playground, because he's already inside. He's found that power and that peace within him. I think peace is a big part of it. It's like it's the foundation of real power, is that we're in peace with ourselves. And that's what's missing from a lot of us in the world, but, especially entrepreneurs and, corporate world, government world. We aren't connected to ourselves at that fundamental level of peace within ourselves. We're always in conflict. And so we're making choices and living life from that conflict rather than peace or that sense of real power.
What role do psychedelics play maybe for this kind of persons, like to get back the access to this inner power? Because I think a lot of people, maybe they know it and maybe they read it in some kind of books. So it's all on a mind level. They understand it. Yeah. But for the most of the people we work with, it's really, really hard to feel it. Yeah. And we made the experience that psychedelic can break up a little bit, like to crack open their heart. And then there's like a small connection, and then they have like a pathway which they can make broader with meditation, spiritual practice, music, all kind of things. So what do you think about the role of psychedelics for entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that is the reason for them to do psychedelics. They need something really powerful to crack them open. It's like, a shaman in Peru once said to me that all psychedelics are amplifiers for what we feel inside. And when we're in our normal kind of state, it's sometimes really hard to feel what's there. But psychedelics will, and lots of different plant medicines allow you to feel what's actually there. On the negative side, all the things that we don't want to feel, we get to feel them. And all the things that we do want to feel, finally, we start to feel them. And that's where this powerful insight starts to happen for all of them, I think. They see all the shittiness that's inside of them and how they've been operating in the world from that,
Yeah.
that conflict. It's like they're driven by their traumas or by their fears, or they're driven by their ego. They want to prove themselves. They don't actually live from a place of real connection to them. And that's stuff for all of us, in the beginning, I think. But at least they get to, through that experience, they start to touch that, and they start to have these insights, and maybe they start to go in a different direction. But the problem is, like you sort of said, that you do need, especially navigating the world of entrepreneurship, different practices to be able to maintain that connection with yourself. Because life is going to come back and it's going to punch us in the face pretty quickly after our experience. And then what do? Our tendency is just to revert back to, form like how we were before. And we're back in our limiting pattern. We're disconnected from that feeling. So all of these practices, breathwork, meditation, any kind of embodiment practice, any practice that allows us, gives us space to connect to feeling and what we want to feel, is going to be really powerful.
Yeah, I can feel that. So maybe you can give us a little insight into your life as an entrepreneur and as one of your father, and you don't live in the UK, so your base is in Goa. So you're also like traveling a lot, and so what special practice you have for your daily life to reconnect to your body, to your feelings? I know you're a great musician, great guitar player, and maybe this is also a really important tool for you to be in the flow with your emotions.
Yeah. I mean, it usually starts with what I call the 5 senses practice. And that's simply just taking like 5 minutes just to bring my attention into the different senses. So just listening for a few moments, feeling the sensations on my skin, the feeling sense, looking around in front of me, picking up on all of these details. And I'm always surprised, even like if I do this in my room every day, the little details that I see that weren't there before that I miss. And then connecting to the taste and the sense of smells. And that just brings me into my body. That just brings me into the moment. And then from there, it's just about dropping into the heart, dropping into the belly, and this process of what I call self-approval, which is just to give yourself the approval and permission to feel your state of being as it is right now. All the resistance that's there, anything that's uncomfortable, but also the thing that feels good. And through that, I come in. Yeah.
Can you give an example for self-approval?
Yeah. So I come into the moments. I'm in the body. There's a phase where I would connect with. There's a third eye meditation that I teach, but it's simply 3 steps just to focus the attention of the mind. Brings me into the moments. And then from there, it's just about bringing that attention and directing the breath into the space of the chest and the heart, and noticing what are the sensations and feelings that are present. And so as I do this right now, there's a general kind of softness and tingling, but there's also a bit of pain there in the chest as well. And so I'm just bringing my attention into that, breathing into it, and just giving myself the approval and permission to feel it. I'm approving of everything that's there, so that when I do that, it starts to shift, it changes. And that removes the resistance. It allows me to drop deeper into myself on a feeling level. And so I do that in the heart, but I also do that in the belly, because the belly is the seat of desire. That's where our wanting comes from.
Yeah.
So if we're not connected to desire, then, it's unconscious still. But that's generally where this idea of, what do I want to feel emerges, usually in the belly first. And that can take a bit of time to feel into in the beginning. But it starts to emerge, and then suddenly I'm connected to something like peace, or peace, freedom, power, creation, beauty. These are kind of the themes of what we want to feel in life. And that's what I've kind of seen doing these practices over the years. That seems to be what emerges for everyone. Except we have to describe it in our own language that is more meaningful to each of us. And when I feel that sense of feeling, that to me is the closest, the most obvious aspect of how I recognize my authentic self. Because we all have that moment in life, we're doing something that we really enjoy and we feel good, and it's like, oh wow, I feel myself again, except we then use that practice as a way to connect to that feeling, and we forget that actually the feeling's already there. We just have to bring our attention and have a relationship with that aspect of ourselves. And the more we do that, the more it develops and the more available it is. But at the same time, we want to be able to express that in a certain way. And there are certain practices that or activities that we can do that help cultivate that feeling. And so, playing music was one of those things. Before I went to the forest, to the Huni Queen, I hadn't picked up a guitar for 18 years.
Really?
I didn't know how to sing. And so it just became one of my daily practices. Was just, I always had the guitar there. I'd be doing, my work around coaching and all my online sort of stuff, and building a sort of website and networking and all the stuff you have to do as starting your own business. And every sort of hour or so, I just would pick up the guitar and play a few chords and try and sing a few Hunican songs, and it just emerged from that. But it was just a really easy, fun practice just to recenter and connect to that.
Yeah. I do exactly the same right now. Yeah. In the office down there, I'm working on my online stuff and writing newsletters and blog articles. And then there's this feeling, so I can't really concentrate, or what do I do? And normally I would distract myself. Like I take my smartphone and make something there, or go to the fridge and eat something. And then I just have the guitar there, and then just at the beginning, so I really love to play. Also, like the Yawanawas there in the Huni Queens, they're so inspiring to learn guitar.
Yeah.
And then I just play and I practice some chords and some changes and chords, and then I'm like empty again, and then I can work. So it's so brilliant. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just finding things like that, and everyone's different. One of the interesting practices for me actually is, so I live here in Goa, similar to Copenhagen, like you have a scooter to get around, moped.
Yeah.
And that's a great way for me to just come into, I can ride a scooter in a way where I'm just trying to get somewhere and I'm kind of thinking about something else, or I can drop into the body and, sometimes I do this 5 senses practice, but, riding a scooter is, you have this kind of autonomy again. It's like you're in charge of something very simple. So it allows you to sort of, and it's super dangerous out on the roads here in India. You really have to pay attention. You have to be very present. And so it's this kind of very easy way to drop into sort of like a nice flow state and, and connect, and for me being a little bit dangerous. So like maybe taking a few kind of shortcuts or being a little bit, a bit more dangerous on the road than I might normally be. It awakens something inside. It connects me to a feeling.
Yeah.
And that's just, and I'm just traveling from A to B and I'm using that as a way to practice.
Yeah. I actually started to riding motorbikes in India, but it was like 10 years ago and it was horrible for me. It was really like a challenge. So and now I really enjoy to riding the motorbike. So it's one of the main reasons I live in this kind of countries, I think. Yeah. And a friend of mine, he always said like motorbike meditation.
Yeah.
So because sometimes it's like when you shower, you just have these insights. I hope you don't hear the dogs because they're going crazy right now. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and then you have this emptiness again, and then the creativity kicks in. And this is the practice. But I work with so many people who are just like sitting for 8 hours and working and building funnels and doing this kind of stuff, and then they wonder because they have a dysfunctional pattern in their breathing, or they have pain in their body, pain in their mind, headaches, and all this kind of stuff. It's because of that. You need to make a pause, and you need to have a practice to go back into the flow state.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. So it's, I think that's the kind of fun of when you start to change this standpoint and recognize it, is to find these very easy things to do that just help you drop in again. A lot of people they tend to complicate that step, but actually,
Yeah.
the thing that you can do in a moment are the best ones.
Yeah. How do the indigenous people do this, like navigating through the to the daily life? So maybe you have some insights. I also know some kind of practice they do, but they are not like sitting and meditating so much, and maybe also not doing yoga, but they have like other kinds of connection and practices. So what is your observation of that?
I mean, yeah, what I've noticed in the village, I mean, they play music constantly.
Oh, playing music and dancing all the time.
Yeah, totally. But like making art, making their craft,
Yeah.
or they're out in nature, they're hunting, or they're just, tending to crops, um, you know, or just simply just going out and observing and just being in nature. That's where they get a lot of their insight. Is they'll go sit in the forest somewhere to reflect on.
Yeah.
They're not sitting in lotus position meditating, but they're just present.
Observe.
That's it. And they work with different plant medicines as well that sort of cultivate that. But it's very simple. It's not they don't complicate things. They just have this simplicity about what they're doing and just being very present with what they do, and taking it easy as well, taking things slowly. They're not rushing to get anywhere.
Yeah, this is a good mindset too, just to slow down, and yeah, and I think the people learn from nature, and the nature teaches you to slow down. And just when you observe, it's not like the grass is growing like 10 inches in 5 minutes. It's it takes the time, and yeah, I think we're disconnected also in the Western world more and more from the sources of nature, because we're living in these big cities. We're not touching like earth or ground. We don't have the practices to give thanks to the earth, to the elements. And there's also so much nice Hunikuin prayers. So one I learned from you as well. And I do this now every morning, like to go into the directions and then go to the elements and Nukumana, Ibubu, and it gives me so much strength for my day and so much connection also. And I think this kind of spiritual practice connected with the nature, this is what we need to relearn. And we need to unlearn to be so much on the phone and so much rushing through our day. And then we ask ourselves, where is the time? And I don't have time, and I don't see my family and raising my kids and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah,
this is a big thing.
yeah. It's interesting. Like we're talking about all of this, but it's interesting. Yeah, yeah. And you've probably noticed this in Thailand, and I know friends that are in Bali. But the locals here, they always start their day with their prayers and their little rituals that they do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're already doing this, and then they just go on about their day. But their days are filled with ways to remember and bring them back to, that deeper connection with themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I stumbled about this term re-indigenize. And I wrote like a blog article about this topic. I did a lot of research as well. And it's a really interesting concept for the Western world, I think, because mostly in the Western world, we just lost our roots to our ancestors, tribal kind of lifestyle we had like 1,000 years ago. And so I don't know how it is with you, but when I ask my mother, she can tell me what my grandfather or great grandfather was doing back in the days, you know. So there's like a cutting of this roots of this connection to our ancestry. So this is really interesting concept of re-indigenize, how to use the spiritual practice of the indigenous people. It's not just the Huniko, it's also here in Thailand or in Bali or in India. Everywhere there are like indigenous tribes who have this connection to their ancestry. So maybe one of the last questions I want to ask you, can we rebuild this kind of connection with our roots, with our ancestors in the Western world, in the Western civilization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's happening. There's a lot of conversations happening around this idea. Even like in Davos, like the
Yeah.
indigenous people are going there now and talking.
Yeah.
A lot of the language that you see now is around reconnecting to the environment, sustainability, inclusion, decolonization,
Mm.
and maybe in some instances that's kind of turned into something else. It's been kind of corporatized, what have you. But there is that sort of conversation kind of happening, and these kinds of practices. A lot of my corporate friends, those, and some of my clients, they work in big banking kind of corporations and hedge funds and that kind of thing. And now they've got their meditation room in the building. There are yoga practices, or there are breathwork kind of things. So I think that it's starting to happen. It's just there's still this, everything. The world is still ruled by money and profit, and I think that's going to be the next big shift that happens. Yeah, for the world, I think is reimagining how we run things, where it's not profit driven all the time.
Yeah.
Where we can still do our entrepreneurial work and and make money, but everything's in alignment with the planet, with nature, and how we extract from the earth what we need to. There's a balancing of that.
Yeah. So you mean not like be dependent on money in the future?
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be, but that is, it's like they talk about the health of a nation is, in the past, was GDP, and now they're starting, like how much, what's the economic growth of a country? Okay. It was purely that.
Yeah.
But now they're starting to consider, like, actually what are the levels of happiness, and what are the stress levels, like, other metrics for a healthy country, starting to see that more, which I think is really important. It's pointless making lots of money if we're stressed out and miserable, and everything hates us, and we don't have relationships with our family, and we're eating badly, and we're overweight, and what's the point? So coming back to the roots, I think is a way to, it's that gratitude practice. How did we get here? Where does that start from? Let honor that, get that in right alignment, and then build from there.
Yeah. And it's also an important work, and that is what I feel more and more over the years, to bring the work back to my roots. Because in the last 6 years, I was in South America and in Thailand and all over the world traveling. And now I have the strong urge also to bring something back to my roots, to my home country, to my home city as well, because I lived there, and the upbringing was, for me, it was great. I have this state which provided me with everything, with education, with money, with a lifestyle where I can afford stuff. So I'm really grateful for that, and so I think now it's also the time to give something back, because yeah, especially in Europe, I think there will be challenges in the near future, and yeah, the medicines and the work, the coaching work, the ceremonies. I think it's well needed over there for the people to feel more safe in their body and to yeah to just evolve from this point.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But you're doing great work in Copenhagen. I think it's
Yeah. Kopangane now in 1 month, or maybe in 3 weeks, going back to Europe. We'll do 2 retreats over there, and yeah, also bring the chantings and the prayers and the drumming also to entrepreneurs. So I did that now for like 3 years, and the people are always like, the feedback is the same. So it reminds me on something which I know deep inside myself, like ceremony, like fire, like ice bathing, like breathing, like community, and talking about deep stuff and storytelling. So you're also a great storyteller, Scott. So I think this is the practices we need there, to sit back on the fire, to share great stories, learn from these stories, because this is also the indigenous way of develop and evolve in this kind of time. So about the stories, about the elements, about the prayers and the singing and playing music and dancing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I mean, it all lends itself to this question that I always come back to, which is, what I said in the beginning. I ask this question myself. What do I want to experience really in life? And what we're talking about is a way to shift our experience and come into a different standpoint of ourselves and ask that question from there. And I think that's the more and more that we do that, I think the more authentic we are, the more in alignment we are, the better choices that we made, the better the experience that we get in life. It always shocks me when I started living this life this way. I was making less money. I had less security, but I was much more happier, and I still got to live this great life. It was even better than before. It just didn't look how it did before. All those things I thought were problems before that I needed to take care of weren't actually that important. So there is a better life for all of us, I think, if we can ask this question in the right context, from the right standpoint.
You know what I love about you as a coach? It's like you're working with such deep questions. So, and I think this is like also the essence of a good leader, of a good guide, of a good coach. Like not to say, do this, do that, follow me here, follow me there. It's about, the right questions at the right time. And I think that also for the audience, when you take something out of this podcast, the first question, what do you feel? Just ask yourself, what do you feel? What comes up? Maybe you can share it in the Telegram group, or you can write us an email or something. And then what you want to experience. And so all good things, in Germany, we say all good things are free. So you have a third question as well for us.
Yeah, like what would it be like to realize your full potential? So if you understand what you want to feel and what you want to experience, what would be the full potential of that? And then the next question that I like to work with is, what would it be like to then realize the full potential of being human? Like, what is our full potential? Like, they say we use only 10% of our brain as an example. Like, to be fully awakened and really fulfill the potentiality of our evolution. That's a good question, for the medicine as well. And then the last one, I think, which I've started working with recently, is what are the choices that I can make now that is in alignment with what I want to feel, the experience, fulfilling my potential, fulfilling the potential as a human, that are going to have like a positive impact on the planet 1,000 years from now.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And that kind of came to me reflecting on, the Eleusinian mystery school back in ancient Greece. Um, and this is interesting to understand that, this was a week-long initiation that happens in ancient Greece, and everyone from Greek culture would go to these initiations. Everyone, like all the people that we know from Greek culture back then, were initiated into these mysteries, and they spent 1 year to prepare for that experience, and that involved different rites and practices and stories and teachings, and taking this psychedelic substance, which I think is called kekion, which is very similar to LSD. Comes from the fungus that grew on Bali,
Okay.
and and they say that basically that initiation was a lot of the inspiration from for Greek culture came out of those experiences. And those people that did that then went on to impact not only Greek culture, but everything that Greek culture is kind of the foundation of a lot of Western kind of culture.
Mm.
What they did back then impacted what we do today. We still talk about what they do today. It still influences the way we think.
Yeah, crazy.
Um, Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And here we are in this day and age where psychedelics are really available. We don't have to spend a year preparing for our weekend retreat or whatever it is that we do. But just to think about that question, what is it now that if I can get all those other questions answered, to start to think about that, what's going to have a positive impact for 1,000 years now?
Mm.
And as an entrepreneur, like that's a question that can really ignite you, I think. It really sort of cuts out the sort of things that are maybe not so important. And, maybe there's a short-term gain there, but, is it going to improve the planet? Are people still going to be talking about your entrepreneur project 1,000 years from now?
Yeah. Impacting so much generations as well. Wow. Mm.
There's and there's that mindset of, I think it's a Native American perspective, where they would, I think they would give thanks to the 7 generations that
Mm.
were before them,
Yeah.
and choose to do things that would impact the next 7 generations.
Mm.
That they would benefit from that thing. So like planting a tree, that,
Yeah.
that's going to benefit. Then, like taking care of the nature, going to benefit 7 generations now. Compared to now, where a lot of the activity of corporations and big business now,
Awesome.
you look at sort of, I was just seeing this on a podcast yesterday, how even going back to the 50s, the amount of wealth that they had back then, what their parents could do, one income could, you could afford a house and a car, and you only had one parent working, compared to, 2 generations later. That's gone.
Yeah.
We're going in the opposite direction. With all this technology and connection and ability, we're going very quickly in the different direction.
Yeah.
Point where we're not having kids anymore.
Mm.
So these are, it's a really important question, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I will also write these questions in the description of the podcast so that the people can work with them. And wow, I can just talk with you for another 2 hours, I think. Such an interesting person. And so good that you came here to Kopangan, and that I can relate to your work, to your music, to your stories, and super inspiring. And I think we will, maybe visit Goa in this year. I think we will come over to visit you, maybe.
Some say.
Yeah.
I hope to get back to Kopangan soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it there.
That's a must.
The whole place. Yeah. Very beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, this work is needed here to get grounded in nature, Because what happens, I think it's all over in the world, also in Goa. It's they cutting trees, they building up big resorts and all that kind of stuff because the people are escaping from Europe, and I'm one of them as well. It's not that I will say I'm escaping, but I think there are a lot of people who are just like leaving their roots behind to live on a nice place with the beach and with the community, because this is what we are craving. Yeah. Also this kind of connection to nature. So, and I think with this work over here and all over in the world, also for entrepreneurs, we can ignite what you said. We ignite this passion also like to doing big projects, not just for ourselves and for buying the next big car or making this or making that, but also like to give something back to nature, give something back to humanity, and make like a win-win-win situation for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, win-win, totally.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you, Scotchy, for your time. So alegria. So the last words are always for our guests. So if you want to speak directly to the audience and you have something in mind, please go ahead.
Gosh, I mean, I think we covered it all. I think it's,
Yeah, I think so.
if you've got this far into the podcast, I just say thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got something out of that, and you know, connect with Robin, connect with me, connect with beautiful communities wherever you are, and there are lots of great people doing exactly what we're doing. Just to reflect on. Who are you really? Like, what do you want to feel? What do you want to experience? Really start to investigate where are you coming from in the choices that you're making, and try to seek to come into more alignment with who you really are, and live from that place. It's really, that is to me the big shift that we're transitioning into. So the more you do that, the more the planet's going to get a lot better. And your life is going to get better.
House. Thank you for your time. I will link your Instagram as well and your website and everything who wants to connect with you on a more deeper level. And thank you for your time and for your work.
Yeah, you too, man. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.